As the night falls and the darkness creeps in, the world around us changes. Shadows seem to grow longer and the silence becomes deafening. But what happens when the silence is broken by the sound of footsteps that don't belong to anyone you know? What happens when you hear a whisper in your ear, but there's no one there? Welcome to our world of horror, where the unknown is the only certainty and fear is the only emotion. Brace yourself, because the journey we're about to take is not for the faint of heart. Despite their visit to the Lilith mine, Lena and Maya couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to the story than they knew. They were determined to uncover the truth about the strange tunnel near their home and its connection to the disappearances that had haunted their community. One day, while browsing through the local library's collection of old newspapers, Lena stumbled upon an article that caught her eye. It was a report from over a century ago, detailing a series of disappearances that had occurred in the same area as the Lilith mine. The article spoke of a strange tunnel that had been discovered by a group of miners, and of the mysterious disappearances that had followed its discovery. Lena's heart raced as she read on, realizing that this could be the breakthrough they had been searching for. Excited and determined, Lena and Maya set out to investigate the area around the old mine. Armed with flashlights and a sense of purpose, they made their way deep into the woods, searching for any sign of the elusive tunnel. After hours of wandering through the dense forest, they stumbled upon a clearing. In the center of the clearing was an old, crumbling structure that resembled a small chapel. The sisters cautiously approached the chapel, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the crumbling walls. As they drew closer, they noticed that the door was slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. Without hesitation, Lena pushed the door open and they stepped inside. The interior of the chapel was musty and damp, the walls covered in strange symbols and markings. As they made their way deeper into the chapel, they discovered a small room hidden behind a curtain. The room was small and cramped, with a stone altar at its center. On the altar lay an old, leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age. Lena's heart raced as she picked up the book and began to flip through its pages. It was filled with strange symbols and markings, and she couldn't make out most of the writing. But then, she stumbled upon a section that made her blood run cold. The page was filled with the names of people who had disappeared over the years, including several who had vanished recently. And in the margin, in a shaky hand, was written, "Sacrifices to the Dark One." Maya gasped as she saw the writing, her face pale with horror. They knew then that they had stumbled upon something truly sinister, something that had been haunting their town for centuries. They quickly left the chapel, their minds racing with the implications of what they had discovered. They knew that they had to show the book to the authorities, to prove that there was still evil at work in their town. But as they made their way back to their car, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They could hear the sound of footsteps in the woods, the rustling of leaves and the snap of twigs underfoot. They quickened their pace, their hearts racing with fear. As they reached their car, they looked back to see a figure standing in the shadows, watching them. The figure was hooded, and they couldn't make out its face. Lena and Maya quickly got into the car and drove away, their hearts pounding with fear and uncertainty. They knew that they had stumbled upon something truly terrifying, something that they might never fully understand. But they were determined to keep digging, to uncover the truth and put an end to the darkness that had haunted their town for far too long. Lena and Maya's discovery of the leather-bound book filled with the names of people who had disappeared and the mention of sacrifices to the Dark One had sent chills down their spines. They knew that they needed to take action and report their findings to the authorities, but they also feared for their safety. As they drove back to their home, they couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. They felt like they were being followed, and every rustling of leaves or sound of footsteps made them jump in fear. They were relieved to finally make it back home and lock the doors behind them. The sisters spent the rest of the night going over their findings, trying to make sense of the mysterious symbols and markings in the book. They were convinced that they had stumbled upon some sort of dark cult, and they knew that they needed to find out more before they could take any further action. The next day, they decided to head back to the chapel to investigate further. They drove their car to the edge of the woods and made their way on foot to the clearing where the chapel was located. As they approached the chapel, they noticed that the door was now closed. They exchanged a quick glance and cautiously pushed the door open. The musty smell of damp stone hit them, and they could hear the creaking of the old wooden floorboards underfoot. They made their way deeper into the chapel, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. They stopped in their tracks when they heard chanting coming from a room down the hall. Lena and Maya exchanged a nervous look and crept towards the room. They peered inside and were shocked by what they saw. A group of robed figures stood in the center of the room, chanting and swaying to the beat of a drum. They were holding hands, forming a circle around a stone altar that had been placed in the center of the room. On the altar lay a young woman, her eyes closed and her arms outstretched. Lena and Maya watched in horror as one of the robed figures produced a knife and approached the altar. The chanting grew louder, and the robed figure raised the knife above his head. Lena and Maya knew they had to act quickly if they were going to stop the ritual. They burst into the room, their flashlights shining bright. The robed figures turned to face them, their faces twisted in anger and hatred. Lena and Maya stood their ground, refusing to be intimidated. They demanded that the ritual be stopped and that the authorities be called. The robed figures hesitated for a moment, but then they lunged forward, determined to protect their dark secret. A fierce struggle ensued, with Lena and Maya fighting for their lives against the cultists. In the end, the sisters emerged victorious, having overcome their fear and fought off the cultists. They were relieved to have stopped the dark ritual and saved the young woman from being sacrificed. They contacted the authorities and showed them the leather-bound book and the evidence they had gathered. With their help, the authorities were finally able to uncover the truth behind the disappearances and put an end to the cult's activities. Lena and Maya were hailed as heroes in their community, having risked their lives to uncover the dark secrets that had been plaguing their town for so long. They knew that they had made a difference, and that they had helped to bring peace to the families of those who had disappeared. But even as they basked in their newfound fame, they couldn't help but wonder what other dark secrets lay hidden in the shadows of their town, waiting to be uncovered. They knew that they would always be vigilant, always on the lookout for any signs. Lena and Maya had finally put an end to the dark rituals that had plagued their town for so long. The authorities had arrested the cultists and put an end to their activities. The sisters had become local heroes and were praised for their bravery. However, the aftermath of their discovery weighed heavily on their minds. They couldn't help but think about the people who had disappeared and the families who were still waiting for answers. They decided to visit some of the families and offer their condolences. They knew that nothing they could say or do would bring their loved ones back, but they wanted to offer support in any way they could. Their first stop was at the home of the young woman they had saved from the dark ritual. She was still in shock and traumatized from her ordeal. Lena and Maya offered to help her in any way they could, but she just wanted to be left alone. Their next stop was at the home of the family of one of the missing persons. The family was still holding out hope that their loved one would return. Lena and Maya had to break the news to them that their loved one was likely one of the sacrifices made by the cult. The family was devastated, but they were grateful for the closure. Lena and Maya continued to visit the families of the missing persons. They saw firsthand the pain and suffering that had been caused by the dark rituals. They realized that even though they had put an end to the cult's activities, the wounds that had been inflicted on their town would take a long time to heal. As they drove back to their home, Lena and Maya discussed what they could do to help the families who had been affected by the cult's activities. They decided to organize a fundraiser to help the families pay for therapy and other expenses. They knew that it wouldn't solve everything, but it was a start. The fundraiser was a huge success, and the community came together to support the families. Lena and Maya were grateful for the outpouring of support and knew that they had made a difference. As time passed, the town slowly began to heal. The memories of the dark rituals began to fade, and people started to feel safe again. Lena and Maya knew that they had played a small part in making their town a safer place. They continued to keep a watchful eye on the woods and the chapel, always on the lookout for any signs of danger. They knew that they couldn't let their guard down, but they also knew that they had the support of their community. In the end, Lena and Maya had discovered that bravery comes in many forms. They had faced their fears head-on and had put an end to the dark rituals that had haunted their town for so long. They had shown that even in the face of danger, there is always hope. Months had passed since Lena and Maya had put an end to the dark rituals in their town. The memories still haunted them, but they had finally started to feel like life was returning to normal. One day, Lena received a call from the police department. They had discovered something in the woods that they thought she should see. Lena and Maya drove to the woods, unsure of what to expect. When they arrived, they were met by a group of police officers and investigators. They were led to a small clearing in the woods where a small, hidden entrance had been uncovered. It was a tunnel, similar to the one they had discovered months before. The tunnel led deep into the ground, and it was clear that it had been used recently. The investigators had found evidence of recent activity, including candles, ritualistic symbols, and other disturbing items. Lena and Maya couldn't believe what they were seeing. They had thought that they had put an end to the cult's activities, but it was clear that they had missed something. The investigators asked Lena and Maya to follow them deeper into the tunnel. As they walked, the air grew colder, and the walls became slick with moisture. Lena and Maya felt a sense of dread wash over them. Finally, they reached a large room deep underground. The room was lit by candles, and the walls were covered in strange symbols and markings. In the center of the room was an altar, and on the altar was a small box. The investigators opened the box and revealed its contents. Inside was a small, ornate dagger. Lena and Maya recognized it immediately. It was the same dagger that they had seen in the cult's chapel months before. The investigators explained that they had been monitoring the woods since Lena and Maya had put an end to the cult's activities. They had seen a group of people entering the woods at night, and they had followed them to the tunnel. It was clear that the cult had not been fully disbanded, and that they had been operating in secret. The discovery of the dagger meant that there was still more to uncover. Lena and Maya knew that they couldn't rest until the cult had been completely eradicated. They thanked the investigators for their work and promised to keep a watchful eye on the woods and the chapel. As they drove back to their home, Lena and Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. They knew that the cult was still out there, and they didn't know what else they would uncover. But they also knew that they had to keep fighting. They had to protect their town and the people they loved. They would not rest until the cult had been completely dismantled. The discovery of the tunnel and the dagger had reignited Lena and Maya's determination to put an end to the dark rituals once and for all. They knew that it wouldn't be easy, but they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. In the end, Lena and Maya had learned that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places. But they had also learned that bravery and determination can overcome even the darkest of forces. They were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and they knew that they would do it together.